Acts 28 and in verse number 1. The Bible says, and when they were escaped, then they knew that the island was called Melita. By the way, that name Melita means a place of refuge. Boy, if there's anything Paul and those men, those mariners needed, was certainly a place of refuge at that moment in their life. Verse 2 says, and the barbarous people showed us no little kindness, for they kindled a fire and received us every one because of the present rain and because of the cold. And when Paul had gathered a bundle of sticks and laid them on the fire, there came a viper out of the heat and fastened on his hand. And when the barbarians saw the venomous beast hang on his hand, they said among themselves, no doubt this man's a murderer, whom though he hath escaped the sea, yet vengeance suffereth not to live. And he shook off the beast into the fire, and felt no harm. Howbeit they looked, when he should have swollen up, or should have swollen rather, or fallen down dead suddenly. But after they had looked a great while, they saw no harm come to him. They changed their minds and said, he was a god. Now, when you read these verses, several things quickly come right to surface. Number one, we see the providence of God. There in verse 1, look back with me. The Bible says when they were escaped, then they knew that the island was called Melita. It was God's will that the Apostle Paul make it to safety. He revealed that to him in Acts 27. And Paul was just saved enough, loved God enough to declare, I believe God. And he made it. That's the providence. Then we see the people that God had prepared to receive him in verse 2. There were barbarous people, and they showed him no little kindness, for they kindled a fire and received every one because of the present rain and because of the cold. In other words, they showed them great kindness. They were very favorable toward them. And then, of course, if you look in verse 6, we see the perception that's given here. Notice with me again. Bible says, howbeit they looked, when he should have swollen or fallen down dead suddenly. But after they had looked a great while and saw no harm come to him, they changed their mind and said it was a god. Look with me in the latter portion of verse 6 again. Bible says, and when they saw no harm come to him, they changed their minds. I want to use that and just preach for a few minutes tonight on this thought. It should have, but it didn't. It should have, but it didn't. When you look at this particular passage, I'm sure you can relate even to the title tonight. And there's no doubt probably been some things that happened in your life, as well as I know in mine, that maybe someone said quietly or maybe outspokenly. They could have said, you know, that should have done you in. But it didn't. I'm going to tell you, I remember as a lost man, I got in a couple of fights. And all honestly, they should have done me in. But they didn't. I can remember getting I got a lot of whoopings from my daddy. A couple of them should have done me in. And rightfully so. But they didn't. I thought about this. There's been some times in my life personally. There was time, I would tell you turn this off, but I'm not. But anyhow, before Cindy and I were saved, there was a time she slung a skillet full of hamburger helper. I mean, wasted a whole good, wonderfully fixed skillet of hamburger helper she slung it right at me. Just like Bruce Lee would sling something. It should have done me in. But I ducked just in time. And all that hamburger helper went on the wall, and the frying pan went into, actually over into the sink. It didn't do me in. Don't hold her at fault for that. I deserved it when she throwed it. Trust me. We were lost then, okay? She hadn't threw one at me, not lately. But anyhow, I want you to notice quickly. I want to get in the message. Notice with me. I want you to notice, first of all, the opposition that Paul encountered here. In verse 3, again, the Bible says that he went and gathered a bundle of sticks and he laid them on the fire. And out of the fire came a viper. And that viper latched and fastened onto Paul's hand. I want to tell you something amazes me. When you read this, you must realize that this viper came out of the fire, out of the heat rather, and latched on the very one that was doing the laboring. Paul was doing all he could. I mean, those barbarous people had shown Paul and them some great kindness. And he was just trying to be an asset. He was trying to add to. He was laboring. And there that viper latches on his hand out of the heat. But not only the one that was laboring, I also thought about this. Notice where the opposition happened, where it was located. See, Paul was right next to the fire. He was right there real close to where the heat's at. Paul's located himself there on purpose. He wanted to be a part of what was going on. He wanted to be a help, not a hindrance. One thing I've learned about the devil over the years, and most of you, many of you already know this, that the devil is a master when it comes to being crafty. He's crafty at what he does. He knows when to attack. He knows how to attack. And one thing I found out about it, he is really persistent. He's a specialist when it comes to ride-bys. If he doesn't get you the first time, he'll come back by and try and get you again. That's a fact. He does everything he possibly can to slow those down that are trying to do what's right and live right and be everything that God would have them to be. He's crafty. He's constant. You think about this with me tonight. The devil, he's always looking for somebody, for some person he can put on the sideline. For somebody that he can take out of the service of God and set them down. He doesn't care what it takes to accomplish that. It doesn't bother him what he has to do to reach that particular goal and to do harm to the cause of Christ. He just goes after it. There's no rules with the devil when it comes to that. He's always looking for a person to sit down. He's always trying to find a place where he can get a seat. Sure. That church over there in the book of Revelation, Jesus told them, said, I know where your seat is. I know where that seat's at. Satan had a seat, and I can't remember the church. It's fell in my memory. Some of you preachers help me. That church where Satan's seat was. You know why he had a certain seat in that church? Somebody was missing. Somebody was absent. Boy, you ever thought about any time we are absent and we miss a service that we could, in reality, be there? We could possibly be giving our seat up for Satan to waltz in and sit down. Now, I didn't say we were, but we possibly could. He's always looking for a person that he can sideline. He always searches for a place he can sit down. He's always looking for a partnership that he can split up. You hear me and hear me well. Everything that God's established in the lives of those that are here tonight and are married and have children, everything that God's established in your home and in your life if Satan could, and trust me, he will try to rip it apart, to do, he's not wanting to harm it. He's wanting to destroy it. He's wanting to get rid of it completely. He wants to annihilate the existence of your wife or your husband and your children. He's a crafty, cunning, and he's constant. We see tonight the opposition that Paul encountered. But notice secondly with me, the opinion that we find expressed in verse number 4. Notice you'll find it is a private opinion. The Bible said when the barbarians saw the venomous beast hang on his hand, they got off in the corner. And they talked among themselves. Oh my, I'm not going there. Said, no doubt, this man's a murderer, whom though he hath escaped the sea, yet vengeance suffereth not to live. I'll go ahead and just tell you this, you already know it. Anytime you try to do what's right, and Paul was just literally trying to do what was right, people will unequivocally talk about you. Now, what I'm about to say may be a little shocking. Oftentimes, not all times, but oftentimes, it's those of the household of faith. Kind of like Job's friends. Oh, we love them. I mean, Job's friends showed up, give them an A++ for that. They sat there with them, with Job, give them an A+++ for that. But eventually it came out, didn't it? What's in the heart, sooner or later, it's going to come out the mouth. And many times, as sad as it is to say, a lot of times it's the people of the household of faith that get off in those little corners. It was a private opinion they had. Notice something else with me tonight. It was also a preconceived opinion. How you know that, preacher? Look back in verse number 4. The Bible says, when they saw that the venomous beast didn't hang on his hand, they said among themselves, no doubt, this man's a murderer. In other words, they had already summed it up. They had it etched in stone. They had done drove the anchor in deep. Said, I know why that's happening. I know why that's going on in his life. I know why all that happened to his family. I know why that's taking place in the church. Or they had that preconceived opinion, no doubt. We see here, it was the opposition he encountered. There was the opinion that was expressed. But then we see there was an ongoing, a continual event taking place here. Look in verse 5. Bible said, and he shook off the beast into the fire, and he felt no harm. Latched on his hand. And I tell you, I don't like snakes. To be honest with you. You want to tell the only kind of snake I like? Dead. I'm talking about graveyard dead. Here a while back, we had a black snake get up under our carport there at the house. We got to mind you, I was working probably an hour and a half from home. And Miss Cindy calls me frantic because there's this black snake crawling around the top of our carport. The brick hadn't been covered up at the very top yet. And I said, yeah, guess who got the thrill of covering all that up? But anyhow, she calls me. She's frantic. There's a snake. He just about wrapped himself around my head. I said, well, honey, calm down. Calm down. That snake about bit me. I said, what color is it? Black. I said, oh, that's a good snake. She said, that is not a good snake. There's no good snakes. I said, you're right. There's no good snake. But I couldn't help her. But needless to say, it certainly got her attention. And any time things happen in our life, a lot of times people have that preconceived assumption, and they try to figure out why it happened. But there's something I found out about snakes, Brother Mike. I don't like them because, number one, they are ill. They are ill. Real ill. I-L-L. Ill. I mean, they have an agenda. Yeah. Amen. Number two, they are very intimidating. They intimidated my wife that day. And it intimidated me. I'm in Albemarle, North Carolina. I was about an hour or so from the house. I said, honey, I'll take care of him when I get home. Well, I don't know where we'll be. I'll go in there and get him, call you. But they're intimidating. They're ill. I tell you something else. They literally don't give up. That snake, when I finally got there, Brother Mike, it was just going all around top. And it was buggery. A big old long, about a 6-foot long black snake. Big one, yeah. Yeah. You know what got him? That hoe. I couldn't shoot my gun. I was wanting to shoot my gun bad. I got a pistol and don't get to shoot it much. I want to shoot him. Saying, don't you shoot a hole in our carport. Don't you shoot through the wall. I want to shoot him. He's intimidating. He's always ill. A snake, you'll also find, is one that literally inflicts pain. That's what he's there to do. I remember I told Cindy, I said, don't worry about it. It's a black snake, honey. If it bites you, it's not poisonous. She said, but it'll still hurt. I said, absolutely. It is going to hurt. Because the snake is determined to inflict pain. Behold, our adversary, the devil, who walketh about as a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. He's always ill. That's an ill rascal. You know why he's ill? Because he got beat at Calvary. You know that's right. He's a beat devil. He's a broken devil. No matter what he works at and tries the hardest to accomplish, ultimately it's still going to fail. But you want me to tell you what really galls him? How many of you know what galled means? Up here y'all may say frost. You don't chaps you. You know what chaps the devil? He knows he's barbecued one day. He's going to get barbecued. I read the book over there in the last chapter, over there in the last book of the Bible. Jesus is going to throw him over. Let him fry a while, baby. He's going to come. You'll forget about medium well. He's coming out well done. Lord, how'd I get off on that? We see here it's an ongoing event. Now, listen. You would have thought, in all honesty, that the great storm Euroclydon and all the events that took place in Acts 27 would have been enough to, give Paul a break. If there was any time we could have possibly talked to Apostle Paul, and he would have said, I kind of feel like a bug on a windshield right here, going into Acts 28. I kind of feel like an old bug on a windshield. You know them bugs, they just hang on for dear life. I had one ride with me from Pageland all the way to Columbia, about two-hour ride here a while back, but that's another story. But Paul probably felt like an old bug on a windshield. I mean, all he had been through, all that he was facing now, here and all he was presently going through in Acts chapter 28, we see Paul, when that venomous snake, when that viper latched onto him, I see two things. Number one, he released something. He shook him off. You want to tell you the only thing you can do when the devil parks on your doorstep, sooner or later you got to shake him. You got to let him loose. You see, don't give place to the devil. Boy, I ought not to even be saying that as bad as I am. I'm going to preach to y'all a while and get them straightened out. Don't give place to the devil. And how guilty I am. How often we do that very thing. Because you see, I allude back to this morning. We don't understand. We're really infinite beings in a finite body. You see, we are a spirit with a soul and a body. We're going to live forever. That's a whole nother message. Better not run that one. But so often we give him place because we get caught up in our flesh, in our feelings, and they haunt us. Listen, we should, or they hammer at us, and eventually they'll haunt us if we continue to let them get the best of us. And listen, I wish I could tell you every day of my life I walk by faith, but I don't. Sometimes my feelings get the best of me. If you don't believe it, call my wife. Talk to her. She'll tell you there's sometimes I come in, I'm whining like a little baby. About the least of nothing. And then sometimes I come in like Goliath, hunting a little David to get a hold to. I come in all out of sort. A lot of times, and I understand preacher ought to have faith. Preacher ought to trust God more. I understand all of that. Don't you, Miss Kay? I understand about faith. I understand about trusting God. But there's times my truster gets broke. It starts to malfunction, kind of like that speaker up there. My faith at times gets kind of weak. And you want me to tell, and I'm going to be as honest as I can be tonight. You know when those times happen in my life, and it happens in yours, you know really what the main subject matter is? Me. 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 It's all about me. Lord God, how much more can I stand? Lord, why me? Chris Christopher, what have I ever done? Man born of woman is a few days full of trouble. I'm going to tell you, when we get like that in our life, whether we care to admit it or not, it's because our self gets in the center. We get focused on us. Our feelings begin to get the best of us. We forget. God done brought Paul through a great storm in Acts 27. I mean, do you really think all that the Apostle Paul had been through up until Acts 27 is ever written? The great storm, Euroclydon, he encounters and goes through it. Do you really think God was going to let that viper kill him in Acts 28? I'd have wanted to throw the towel in back in Acts 27. When I done told them, boy, do not set sail. There's going to be a lot of harm if we don't. And they go in out and say, listen, I'm just going to swim back to shore. Hope for the best. We see, I'm going to hurry. We see the opposition he encounters, the opinion that's expressed, the ongoing event that he has to deal with. And then there's the observation of the enemy himself. Look in verse 6. Howbeit, I guess this is what gets me. When you first read about the barbarous people, those barbarians, when they first arrived on the island, they showed Paul and those a lot of kindness. I mean, we would call it in our vernacular, rolled out the red carpet. But here, boy, how things change in a short period of time. Notice what they say in verse 6. Howbeit they looked when he should have swollen or fallen down dead suddenly. But after they had looked a great while, it took them a great while of looking. I mean, they watched him. They looked a great while, and saw no harm come to him, they changed their minds and said that he was a god. See, they were looking to see they wanted to see if he was going to fall. They wanted to see if this was the one that was going to do the Apostle Paul in. That's why they kept their eye on him a while. I mean, my Lord, there stands the man. He's been bit by a viper. I don't think they were spiritually minded enough to realize that he was going to be all right, because God told him he was going to be all right. Sometimes, I don't know, maybe the Apostle Paul might have thought, well, I hope this is not the big one. I doubt that. But seriously, they watched him a great while. They wanted to see if he was going to fall. Listen, people will watch our lives. We can't fall. We can't quit. There's no quitting. Why, preacher? I go back to my one statement I made this morning. God's never done anything bad in mine in your life. God's never done anything to cause us harm. God's never led us astray. God's never took us down a path that there was no way we would get through it. If God brings us to it, as the saying goes, He'll bring us through it. And where God guides, He provides, and He takes care of us, He watches over us. And what God starts in our lives, He has absolute authority to stop it. Sometimes He chooses not. Sometimes He just chooses to sit right smack dab down in the middle of minding your messes with us. But they watched Him, kept their eye on Him. They thought surely this was going to be the event in Paul's life. Everything, the storm didn't get him. White viper, that's one of them down in Belize in Central America. They have a snake in the jungles. I've been there, called two-step. And it's called that for a reason. If it bites you, now the natives say if it bites you 2 steps and you're dead, it's a little bit out there. You know, even for a boy from the South that appears to be dumber than a box of rocks and not the sharpest knife in the drawer, that's still way out there. You get bit by a snake in 2 steps and you're gone. But in reality, I can't think of the name of the snake, but they call him a 2-step. If he bites you, chances are you've got about 3 minutes. And I mean, I don't know any missionaries or people just walking around the jungles of Central America carrying the antidote. So chances are, when they get bit, they're gone. And they stood and they watched him. They wanted to see if this was one. Paul, tell us now. Paul's got his head on the chopping block. He's already got off that. And you know those very barbarous people that watched Paul a great while and thought surely that snake was going to do him in? Did you know, later on you read, they were the very ones that did everything they could to accommodate him, to set sail and get to Rome. I mean, they had to provide him a boat. Where'd they get a boat from? But where'd they get all the food? I mean, you got to have some Big Macs. Steak and shake burgers. And a shrimp cocktail, praise God. Chicken of the sea, whatever. All the food, all the water. I mean, a boat. Where'd they get a boat from, brother? Where'd they get a boat? God takes care of His man, takes care of His people. He takes care of His will. He takes care. Whatever happens in our life will always happen for a purpose. Paul tells us, any word before we cut your head off? Yeah. Hey, boys, back there on the island. They really thought they was about to do me in. But it wasn't. There's been times in mine and your life. Now, if we be careful to view our life, we'd have to say like Paul, well, there's been times that this one ought to have took us out. But it didn't. Joseph. Lord, if we could talk to him. When your brother sold you over there to the Ishmaelites, I mean, and chunked you down into that pit. How in the world? Don't you think that would have done you? That should have done you? He would say, yeah, I thought it would. Be honest, but it didn't. Hey, I thought about Noah. Old Noah built that ark. Gets over there after the great flood. Now, I know Noah did do something he shouldn't do. Got intoxicated, but if you go through a building program like he did, you might get... No. Seriously, you don't. But honestly, when all those people were mocking Noah as he built the ark, when the flood came and the waters began to rise, Noah, don't you think maybe that was going to be it? Did a thought ever cross your mind? Noah would say, now he would say, yeah, there was a time or two me and Miss Noah thought it, but it didn't. I thought it would have took me out, but it didn't. David, talk to me. Oh, Lord, have mercy. Yeah, surely I thought old Goliath would have took you out, David. Yeah, I thought it too, but he didn't. Mephibosheth, you're down there in Lodebar. Tell us, Mephibosheth, you all crippled and maimed up down there in Lodebar. Did you ever think you'd ever get back to the king's house? Did you think you'd ever make it? I'll be honest with you, there were several times down there I really thought this was going to take me out of dying Lodebar. But you know what? It didn't. If you ain't feeling something, I'm feeling enough for all of us. Peter, Simon Peter. You ever wondering why the Lord called him Simon Peter after he'd already changed his name to Peter? Because Peter was really contemplating going back to that old fleshly way of life. Peter, boy, you denied the Lord. I know it. I know it ate at you. It bothered you. Did you really? Was every day you really thought maybe you'd done blowed it to the max? You wouldn't ever be right again. Oh yeah. It should have took me out, but it didn't. Yeah. Oh my soul. Yeah. Good. It's good. Old John, he's over there on the Isle of Patmos. He was put over there because they put him in hot oil to fry him up because of his testimony about Jesus. And we know the oil didn't kill him. You know why that oil never bothered him? Didn't kill him. He was already on fire. It didn't bother him one bit because he was already on fire. John, you was over there. They went to put you into that oil. What'd you think? Well, I'll be honest with you. I really thought it should have took me out. But it didn't. I'll close with this. Here's Jesus. Oh, have mercy. We got Easter coming up. Hey, you know Easter's the only time we celebrate something empty. Nobody likes an empty tank, empty checkbook, empty bank account, empty refrigerator, empty cabinets. I'm going home with a truckload of L8s. Hey, amen. But the only time we celebrate emptiness. Tomb's empty. Amen. His bones ain't in a grave somewhere. His body can't be found. But Lord, on that day when they beat you so bad, when you couldn't even be recognized as a man, your head was swollen up big as your shoulders from the poison from those thorns they placed on your head. When they could have looked out your back and saw your rib cage from where those Roman soldiers who were born to do what they did. Think about that. Ripped all the flesh from your body, all the ligaments and all the muscles. On that day when the sun was darkened and the Father couldn't even look upon you. On that time, at that moment, in those hours of travail and darkness, when you became sin, when every vile sin that I've ever committed, every vile sin that ever will you and I commit, He took upon Him that day. Lord, was there ever a time you thought? I'd have to say no. He couldn't say He did. He couldn't say He thought it should have took me out, but it didn't. But I can think this. I do think maybe, just maybe, the devil came up to him face to face at some point. Said, you know that should have took you out. Resurrections took place. That should have took you out, Lord. So you got to call Him Lord too. He's got to get permission from Him too. Anything happens in our lives, He's got to get permission. I can hear the Lord say, oh, I wish I had them in my pocket. Behold, He said, no, I am He that liveth. So I didn't play baseball. And was dead. Was, past tense. I'm He that liveth and was dead. Behold, devil, I have the keys to death and to hell. You know what I say to that? Amen. There's some things that haven't happened in life already, but they will. If they haven't already paid you a visit, trust me. And I'm looking in the faces of most I know has been through some of the very things I'm talking about. Many of you, Brother Doug, oh, there's a lot of times you might have thought it, but he didn't. It didn't take you out. Many of you in here's faced, Miss Janet, there was a time when you faced some great tragedies. You may have thought, boy, they should have took me out, but they didn't. Brother Mike, was you saved before you went to Nam? The devil would love to take you out in Nam, but he didn't. I said he didn't. He'd have loved to have done that dear man of God in Vietnam, but he didn't. It should have put him asunder, but it didn't. A lot of times we get so wrapped up, so overwhelmed in our little things that seem to be so major when they're not really major, they're minor. When we realize all that Christ went through and we look around, we see how many others go through things so much horrific, so many things much pain. You've lost loved ones. You've been through sickness. You've been through times when church family has gone on and boy, there's a void in your heart. There's a void in your life. I'm going to tell you, there's a lot of hurt people go through. Miss Annette, the hurt you feel, people mostly will never, for the most part, will never know, because it's a hurt that people don't understand unless they're a woman and they're married to a preacher or they're married to a man that has gone through cancer and has had, I just tell you right now, I believe the great surgeon got a hold of the surgeon that worked on preachers. I'm just believing that. I just got to believe it. I believe all this happening in our lives individually, in my life, in my family, in our church, back home. I believe God's got His hand. It's in control. And listen, as long as God's got His hand on the thermostat, He knows when to turn the heat down. The question is, are we going to be a thermostat or a thermometer? Oh, listen, a thermometer, it tells what the temperature is. But a thermostat regulates that temperature. We need to let God by faith regulate our lives. Yeah, all would say it should have, but it didn't. Let it go. And there came that chopping block down. Absent from the body, Paul said, before he left out. Present with the Lord.